Welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast with Ben Pakulski, one of the world's top professional bodybuilders, an expert on human performance and mindset mastery. Ben dives deep to deliver the strategies of the top experts to upgrade your body, mind, muscle, strength, performance, biochemistry, and how to become the upgraded modern man. Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.
What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome back. Muscle Expert Podcast. Today's episode was filmed live in my office, and it was fun, and we had a really good time, and we just started recording organically, so at the beginning of the podcast, don't be surprised if it just sounds like you're entering into a conversation between two dudes talking about human psychology. But the guest today, Andy Murphy, is actually a really, really brilliant performance psychologist. He's a master NLP practitioner that's worked with hundreds of high performers, from professional athletes to royalty to high-level entrepreneurs, and Andy's the guy who lets you get out of your own way. So if you're not living the life you want to live, or if you think there's an area of your life that could maybe be improved, it's often because of the programs we're running in the back of our mind, our limiting beliefs. And until you overcome those, chances are life's not going to get any better. So we walk through many concepts, many processes to help you overcome different limiting beliefs, different ailments that may be holding you back from truly living the life you want to live. This is definitely one of the most fun conversations. Andy's got a great energy and a great personality. And it's the people that have listened to this podcast already said it's their favorite one so far. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. And if you do, please don't forget to leave me a review on iTunes. All right, so we're in the middle of a conversation here with Andy Murphy about how fucked up I am and how we're going to make it better. That sounds funny, but that's reality. So I'm being transparent on this episode, guys, and this is going to be fun. So I just spent a weekend with Tony Robbins, and I went as a student, and I tell everybody, like, I went with the intention of learning, but I really wanted to learn how he commands a stage, how he influences his physiology to master his psychology. So I brought in Andy, who is a world-renowned expert on neuro-linguistic programming, and we have already just been organically here discussing me, and not to be selfish, but this is interesting because you guys can all apply it yourself. So I want to learn tactics and strategies on how to really optimize my life, and I know I live this life of, by an external perspective, my life is pretty awesome, right? So I've had a great career, I have a great family, I've got relatively decent amounts of money, I've got a nice car, I've got a nice house, whatever it is. But I'm not living anywhere near my potential. And I know that, and I wake up every day, and it's a process. I realize it's a process, but there's always a degree of like, this year I made a couple $1 million, and then this year, I lost a couple $1 million, and the next year, you know what I mean? And it kind of goes back and forth. You end up being your own worst enemy. So really, man, what we want to work on here is, why is that stuff happening? Let's discuss, why is that stuff happening? And then more importantly, how do we overcome it? And as we spoke about, one of the coolest things that happened at the Tony Robbins seminar is the Dickens process. And I'd like for you're very familiar with the Dickens process.
For sure.
So why don't you tell our listeners about the Dickens process, what it is, and why? I mean, I'll tell you my story, why I think it's so powerful. But I think for me, like I say, I'm living this life of, unless I get a massive amount of discomfort, right, I don't take action, right? Like, so unless I'm really fat, I don't get lean. Unless I'm really broke, I don't get rich. So how do we get over that? Like, the good is the opposite of great, or the opposite of great mentality, or right, the enemy of great.
Well, it's interesting. I love the whole thing, and it's cool that you went to see Tony. That he's the godfather of
Dude,
this
he's
stuff,
the king,
right?
man. He really is the king. And if anyone out there is hating on Tony because he, some people said
cheeseball-y stuff.
Well, yeah, no, but somebody used the word snake oil salesman or something like that. I'm like, no, man, this guy's like, he just gets how to influence human psychology, and that's all that fucking matters. Is like, just influence someone's psychology and they will live a better life.
Totally.
Yeah, every person that walked out of there will forever be changed, forever be a different person. Will they see an immediate gain and change in life? Yes. Right. Will it fade off for most people? Yes, if they don't reinforce the things. But that's right, like everything, man. Like you don't get shredded and expect to be there for the rest of your life. You don't work out once and go, okay, I'm good. I got this for the rest of my life.
Right.
You got to keep that shit up. So what are some, let's talk about this, man, before we even keep going.
Yeah, that's awesome. We just jumped in. I love it, dude. So yeah, but that's the point. Most people, when you start to understand that the brain and the neural nets and neurology work just simply like a muscle, straight neuroscience, neuroplasticity, right? So when you start to understand that it works like a muscle, and we have been pumping that goddamn muscle for probably 20 years over an issue, and then we go, okay, I'm going to go. And suddenly, consciously, not unconsciously, which we'll get into, but consciously, we go, I'm going to change. And then you get all this motivation for a week or a few days.
15 minutes.
Right, but guess what? The muscle that you've been lifting in your head for 20 years, massive, big, thick, it's got guns like you, dude.
Right.
Right, but in your head.
Yep.
And so then people, guess what? Well, they self-sabotage because they don't see instant gratification. They don't see instant reward. So what that means is then they don't see the benefit. So what's their default comfort zone? Is they go back to comfort. They go back to security. They go back to significance. They go back to love and connection. And this holds them still. What I call, what you're talking about is shaking them up, right? Shaking the reality, all right? Because we get caught in comfort. I work with people who are running $300 million businesses. They're kind of comfortable. They're doing all right, man, right?
Exactly.
They're doing all right.
Yeah.
But what I call something is the reality model. And what I mean by that is we get caught up so often as entrepreneurs or just people in general with an idea in the future, a perception of us, an identity, a version of how life should be. And the challenge is we kind of trick ourselves into thinking that's real. It's not fucking real until we're stepping into it. So we tend to live in this fantasy of the future a specific way. What happens is, we talk about the amygdala and stuff, but we become obsessed with that. It becomes our identity. It becomes how we live life. And I know this because I'll talk about my story at 27 years old. I had a nervous breakdown putting together a resort in Fiji. And all of this, I become obsessed with the external. The challenge with this is there's no pain there. So we trick ourselves. Your life might be a mess on the outside, but in your brain, you're going, oh, yeah, I'm that person. I've told people this. This is who I am. I'll get back there. But the truth is they're not feeling that pain for movement. So what I call the reality model is actually looking at what the hell is going on right now in your life. What is the truth?
Yeah.
Right? When we look at the truth, then are you really content, or are you tricking yourself? Or you remember in the past and all the things that went wrong in your life, and then that mind muscle's building, and that's why we get depressed and sad and sabotage ourselves. It's because of our focus. Our filter system in our brain, it really consciously can only focus on probably about 4 or 5 things at once. That's it. One thing ultimately at once, right? But 4 or 5 things. So if you start thinking about your whole life and all the chaos and noise you've got going on, as well as trying to achieve those goals, then all this noise that you've got around you with people asking stuff, new opportunities, you're dealing with this, that, the other. The truth is that takes us away laser focus on what we truly want. And once we feel that pain, we acknowledge that pain, we know that's real, then we have to understand that the unconscious mind and neural nets, they just want to complete. They just want to complete that circuit. So what happens is that feels comfortable, smooth, easy, and that feels normal. So to break out of that boundary, to break out into the unknown, that's so scary for most people. So that's why they live in that fantasy in the head. So when we can shake the reality up of people, when we can get the truth out, then we have to start really understanding there's a transition between the old version of them and the new version of them, right? That, if you've been doing a habit for 30 years and you expect them to get over it or change in a weekend, it ain't gonna happen. It doesn't mean the new neural nets aren't formed. It doesn't mean that we can't see a different perspective. But like what you said before, man, it's about pumping that muscle then. It's about growing it. And so that becomes automated, meaning it goes into our nervous system and starts to become part of us. So there's a transition
Sure.
to do those things.
So there's people out there, like we spoke about, living in these perhaps delusional worlds of making themselves comfortable, and maybe that's where I'm living right now too. I really believe that if I'm being transparent, that I'm capable of much more than I'm doing right now.
For sure.
And I'm busy every day. Am I productive every day? Most of the time.
Yeah,
but I'm not like working at my max. I'm doing things I perhaps shouldn't be working on, like a lot of people out there, right?
Of course.
But that being said, there's probably also softeners or stories I'm telling myself as to why it's okay, whatever it happens to be for me or for you at home. But how do we start getting people to the point that they realize, like, this is not acceptable, and if you don't change it right now, it's never going to change, because it's like training, man. The longer you go doing this shitty form in the gym, the harder it becomes to break.
Right.
So how do we get people to like we talked about Tony's and the Dickens process?
Well, that's what I was about to say,
yeah. If it's walking people through that process, maybe that's it, because it's a deep, complex unraveling of your deepest layers of fucked upness, right?
That is
reality,
the
right?
Dictionary, man.
Yeah,
Fucked
exactly.
upness. But it's making people feel the pain.
Yeah.
And then what we do is something called future pacing. What that means is that, okay, there's the reality model. We're feeling the pain. Well, now what happens if we start imagining what that is if we keep doing that pattern, if we keep doing these sabotage, if we keep doing these anxiety, if we keep doing this half-assedness, what's that going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? What are you going to look at on your deathbed and look back on your life with regrets, instead of going, no, I did everything I could. I just maxed out on
Dude, most people can't even look ahead what they're going to do tomorrow. How do we walk them down the path and the journey of like, hey man, here's what it's going to feel like. So I went through it, but I want you to walk us down that road. Like, it doesn't have to be an extensive process, but getting people an idea of what it is, and how do we create the illusion of that pain so it compels us to take action. Like, Tony always says, stop using softwares. Stop telling yourself it's going to be okay. Be real with yourself. It's, the analogy he uses in his stories is like, turn around and look at the parts that nobody wants to see in the mirror, right? That kind of thing. How do we really reveal our true self, man? Because that for most people is the ultimate challenge, because our ego is there trying to tell us, trying to protect us, and like, you're okay, you're not doing so bad, it's not really that bad. So how do we really like kick our ego out of the way and say, no man, like, I have to change this, or my life is going to be a whole lot of things that I don't want it to be.
I love it. Well, first of all, like what you just said, we've got to understand that we have a constant automatic internal dialogue that's running through our head. The way I teach it is every word we say, like, ultimately we're having about 50,000 images and conversations that are going on in our head. Yep. And so each one of those movies or whatever it is that pops into our head is connected to certain neurochemical cocktails. It's connected to certain beliefs, certain attitudes, certain language, certain values, right? It's connected to all of that stuff. It's also connected to the unconscious mind, which is on automatic. That's your body mind. That's the bit of your mind that blinks you, breathes you, affects your lymph systems, your heart rate. That's your nervous system. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the subconscious or unconscious mind. So what happens is you have all of this playing in your head. Well, every word that you say to yourself is connected directly to an emotion. Think about this. This is everything, right? If the words that we say are connected directly to an emotion, that means that emotion is connected to certain ways we feel about ourselves, certain ways we look at the future, certain ways we look at our business. So if you've got all of this software or these words that are playing, then you're going to feel a certain way, whether that's good or bad. So what we got to learn to do is interrupt that pattern, okay? Nice and simple. And what I get people to do is start to become consciously aware of what's automatically playing. That's step one, right? Yeah, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, right?
Was that what Tony's doing when he's saying, like, quote unquote, make your move? He's got everybody like clapping or hitting their chest, or like, so that's like breaking the pattern.
Well, what he's doing with that's called anchoring. Yeah. What he's doing is, and anchoring is an interesting thing, man. I use this when I've worked with pro fighters who've lost 5 fights in a row and then they go and win a championship. I've worked with post-traumatic stress disorder. I've worked with abuse victims, rape victims. I've worked with the top internet marketers in the world, the top Forex traders in the world, we go on. Yeah. The point is, the brains are very, very similar. Of course, yeah. We're very, very similar. We all get afraid. We all get scared. We all look for comfort. We all do these things. So When we start to learn to interrupt these patterns, become aware, then I'll talk about anchoring in a second, but when we start to become aware, we have to start understanding also our brains are question answering machines. There's not a question I can't ask you, Ben, man, that you're not going to try and answer. For example, what are you going to have for dinner 2 years on a Thursday?
Pizza. Gotta be
Pizza carbs. But your brain tries to answer that.
Right.
Always. In NLP, we can use embedded commands and all this other cool stuff. But when we start to understand that, then we've got to start to ask ourselves the right questions. And Tony talks about all this stuff. But the easiest, fastest way I can tell everyone to start getting control and interrupting these patterns is you've got to ask yourself, I'm about to pick the phone up, about to step into a meeting, I'm about to do whatever it is, go to bed, hang out with the wife, whatever. What thought or what feeling is going on right now? Because the thing that what I teach and build is peak states or alter egos. I get people in that place that they can perform at a world-class level no matter what they're trying to do. Put people on TV sets. I've worked with Hollywood producers. It's all the same thing, right? So when we can understand that what changes states, or what changes a version of us is the emotion behind it.
Right.
It's something I call the driver. So it becomes real simple. Because all we got to do then is start changing or driving the way we feel, which changes our belief and attitude towards what we're about to do. So if you're picking the phone up and you've been having an argument 2 minutes ago, you're going to get on that phone and try and close that deal. What's your beliefs about what's possible? Where's your focus? How are you feeling? What words are going to come out? What's the tonality, the pace, the pitch, the timbre of your voice?
Sure.
That's all going to be fucked, right? It's like
sure.
you're not going to close that deal. So by checking in and interrupting what thought, what feeling, and then asking the question, are these the thoughts and feelings that I want right now?
Man, so, just to interrupt you, Tony had a really good example this weekend. He said they did a study, and I don't remember how many people. I believe it was 100 people. And 100 people were handed a cup of iced coffee, and then another 100 people were handed a cup of hot coffee. 45 minutes later, they came back and said, hey, I've got $20 for you. I just want you to read this one-page story and tell me your answer these questions.
Right.
And everyone goes, okay, sure, I'll take. Some people didn't take the $20. Most people take the $20. And just by whether they received a cold coffee 45 minutes before or a hot coffee 45 minutes before, the people who received a cold coffee said the person in the story, they perceived them as cold and like dark.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the other people perceived them as like warm and
Friendly
caring.
and, yeah.
Same story, just by, like you say, perception of, but also placing that anchor of the emotion or that whatever feeling in their body.
Yes.
45 minutes before, which is like completely unrelated to what you would think about the story, but just by shifting their maybe thought process, 45 minutes later, they're still influenced. So 80% of the people gave the same response in either direction. So 80% of the people in this one said this person's going to be cold, and I forget what the exact
right.
And this person was like warm and caring.
Crazy.
Right? Insane. And
Think
just
about that,
by
though.
a cup of coffee.
Right.
I'm only drinking more coffee by then.
But think about that in life. That means how easily are we influenced?
Yeah, it's crazy. So nobody uses. This is what we talk. We joke about this. Is like everybody's a zombie, right? You actually go around, and you're not actually guiding your life. You're living somebody else's life because you're just like going. 95% of the population of the world lives like robots, like automatons.
Totally. That's
so
the 9 to 5.
How do we create mindful people, man? This is actually where it starts with, right? It's like
That's
so
awesome.
starting with meditation, start with some basic principles, and then, but not even going into that. Continuing on the conversation of you're talking about these patterns, these things that people are instilling in their brain, their emotions they carry in their body. Continue with that.
Well, we can talk about anchoring that.
Yeah.
We'll bring it back to that, because that's a beautiful way to start getting control of what neural nets are firing.
Yeah.
Because that's all it is. That's what we've got to, that's what I really love to do with people is isolate which hat you're putting on, which role you're playing, and then we can build that version of them up.
I love that, man, because I do that actually. I've done it for a long time.
Of course
And not even from. Well, dude, I had a hard time when my daughter was born, trying to be a pro bodybuilder and be like a ruthless maniac in the gym, and go home and be like a dad to this beautiful angel. And I was like, whoa, I can't do that. I had a really hard time switching it on in the gym.
Of course.
So I would come in the gym and I'd be happy and smiling and docile, and my workouts would be shit, and I'd be angry with myself, right? So I was like, okay, you got to anchor yourself. So I learned to do that. So as soon as I came to the gym, I anchored myself to be an angry dick, which isn't good in business because my gym is the same place as my business. And then I go home, and as soon as I jingled my keys in the door, I'd become more dad. Really, I'd put a huge smile on my face. I'd lift my chest up. I'd get down on the floor and play with my kids. Simple but effective, and just learning how to kind of differentiate. So now, even when I come into my gym now, which is also my work, I sit in the car for a couple minutes before I come in, and I anchor myself and go, who do I need to be for these people in my business right now? If I'm coming to do a podcast, it's one thing, and just making sure you're in the right state. And man, Tony, it's so easy. The idea of changing your physiology to change your psyche, it's so easy. And just rewiring it in your nervous system, even from how you sit or how you breathe or how you stand. It's such easy stuff to do if you create those habits.
Totally, because the brain knows the path.
Yeah.
So we're just making the path easier, smoother, and cleaner to go down. But the other side of that is, I love changing your physiology to change state. However, if you're trading Forex, how does jumping up and down, getting your body pumping, and then sitting down? It doesn't. Right. So this is internal, where we have to light up the neural nets from inside.
Glad you brought that up. Right? So yesterday, I'll just tell the story before you continue. I did 9 hours straight of writing yesterday, maybe even 10. Dude. And I didn't even get up, I don't think. Maybe once to go to the toilet. But I never once did I slouch, never once did I lose focus. Because as soon as I felt myself going, I'd bring myself back into a peak state. I anchored myself. That's a fucking cool trick, man. I had never thought about that before. Literally, it was like, put your hands above your head, get a really big deep breath, say yes, boom, back at it. And I was just in this zone to crush it, man. And awesome. I'm so grateful for that, right? Because most people write for 30 minutes and their brain's like, I fear they're picking up their phone, they're doing something else. Dude. I was able to stay in that peak state for literally 9 or 10 hours. I don't know. I think I got in here at 7 a.m. and I worked till 5 p.m. A long time. That's
huge.
Yeah. So if someone can learn to take their productivity from 30 minutes to 6 or 7 hours,
it's game changing.
Yeah, ROI is that's a pretty big ROI.
Yeah, because that's where we introduced the law of Parkinson's, which is folding time. So it's something that would take people a year. If we know how to switch on, if we know how to laser focus, if we know how to maintain it, if we know how to use anchoring, if we know how to do all this stuff, then those results suddenly fold in half.
So before I wrote that down, we'll go into that. But let's talk about getting someone in peak state who just needs to sit down and focus. Like you said, there's someone's doing it, trading stocks, or maybe they're an author. What's their? They don't want to be jumping up and down. So what is their peak state?
Well, beautiful. So what I want people to do is understand that your nervous system already knows everything that it needs to know. So what do I mean by that? If you're not focusing right now on something, understand that there was a time in your life that you were. There's been a moment in your life that you were, whether that was for writing the book we could use that forever with you, Ben, 9 hours, beautiful. Yeah. But whatever it is, it's we can go back and we can bring up or light up that part of the nervous system. So what I look at then, if I'm working with anyone, entrepreneur, stage, whatever the heck it is, it makes no difference. They have a certain perspective, certain breathing rate, certain micro muscles, certain physiology, certain beliefs, certain focus, all of that stuff. So guess what? If we go back and then we pull that out, that memory, and what do I mean by pulling it out?
I understand.
Okay. Okay. Well,
bringing back all of the senses to 5 senses.
Yeah, exactly. You're lighting it up again, and you're seeing it through your own eyes. Mm-hmm. That's very important. These are called submodalities, which another time, right? So when we can see it through our own eyes, it's fully intense. Then guess what? There's a lesson perspective that we can get that. And if we're seeing through our own eyes, then what happens is then we can imagine what we're doing neurologically. We're connecting, but we can imagine what it would be like to sit down now in that same version of us, the same physiology, the same breathing, the same everything.
Can everyone bring back that emotional state? Because I'll tell you what, man, people go, hey, man, Tony did this. He's like, hey, man, I want you to bring back some time when you were in X state.
Impossible.
And I was like, I don't remember, man.
Right. Right. That's also the other challenge with, there's a lot of personal development out there that drives me nuts because they regurgitate the same crap.
Sure.
Right? Cheeseball stuff drives me nuts. Right? So, no, it's not every time you can remember something, right? So, then we imagine. What would it feel like to be laser focused now? what would you sit like?
So is it like a meditative thing? Is it like you closing your eyes, you're trying to like internalize it, or is it
Yes,
like
to a degree. You can do it with your eyes open, but also understand there's, from awareness to focus, there's stages.
Yep.
So what happens is when people sit down at the desk and they open the laptop and they go, oh, it's not coming. It's not coming. I can't do this. It's not coming. Oh, no. Oh, no. And then they beat themselves.
That happened to me last night when I was writing my journal. I sat down to write, and I was like, fuck, I don't know what to write. Close the journal. Keep going.
Right. I've just done 10 hours writing, but I can't write for a minute.
I couldn't write a journal, yeah.
So what happens is we get used to that, and we don't get used to that. So what happens is, first of all, you sit down at your desk, and then understand that you have wide awareness, first of all.
Yeah.
We have very wide awareness. What does that mean? That means we're looking around the room, we're looking at our computer, we're picking our nose, all that stuff,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And then suddenly we start to ask that question. Well, what is it I want to do? What's the outcome that I want here? What that starts to do is it starts to go from wide to medium. So you start to like blinkers on the side of a horse, like on the eyes, you start to become like focused on what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Then that's stage 2. Stage 3 that I teach is then what we've got to do is take you into flow, right? Because that stage, because then it's like from wide to medium, and then we just suddenly in, right?
I was there for a while yesterday,
Right.
Yeah.
But that can take 5 minutes. That can take 2 minutes. But what happens is we sabotage yourself on the way. Mm-hmm. And the next thing everyone needs to understand is this is probably the key most important thing that you can understand about states that people don't teach, because I don't know why. They don't know this stuff. But, for example, when we start talking about brainwave frequency and we're talking about a peak state, for example, a baseball player hitting a 100-mile-an-hour ball, they cannot consciously do that. That ball is too fast for their eyes. So what happens is when we change a state or being in flow, it means our brain is in certain brainwave frequency.
So what are we talking? So let's actually use we're talking like alpha.
Yeah, we're talking alpha. We're talking what drops us into trance is moving from low beta to high alpha. Yeah. Right.
So before you continue,
man.
I think it's going to be actually the podcast that drops 2 before you. I did an interview with James Hart, who's the guy who kind of created the alpha wave training.
Yeah.
So Tony talks about him in his seminar.
That's
so
badass,
he's awesome. Yeah, he's a super bright guy.
Oh,
you familiar with who he is? Biocybernaut?
Yeah.
So just basically training your brain to get into alpha at will. Like, so you go there for 7 days, twice a day, this apparently uncomfortable chamber where you have to, you're just training your thoughts to be able to control where you live.
Which is brilliant. Because if we can start to understand how to drop into that brainwave frequency, then what happens is we're actually in trance. This is what people need to understand. Meditation, you're dropping brainwave frequencies. Yeah. Trance, we're dropping brainwave frequencies. By the way, everybody, you might not like the word, but it's called hypnosis too, right? It's the same thing.
Sure.
So what happens is when we're in that trance state and we're in that peak state, what it means is that we can change time perception. So that's why a baseball player, it can literally hit that 100-mile-an-hour ball. That's why a golf player can get a hole-in-one. Do you think they can see the hole? No. What they do is visualize collapsing the hole to them.
Exactly, yep.
This is why a fighter can take so much punishment in that fight. It's because they're not consciously thinking. They're in deep trance, which changes their pain perception. Right. When I've fought in the past, you've got broken bones, you've broken foot, all your fingers are busted.
But you don't feel it till after.
Well, you feel it, but it's just like, whatever, right? You're in, you're fighting. It's like, I'm in. Right. But you couldn't do that. And afterwards, an hour later, you're like, you cripple for the next 6 weeks.
Right.
But the point is, that's trance. So it's the same thing with business. It's the same thing with entrepreneurs. It's the same thing with you being in peak state to perform at your desk. We have to go through these stages to allow our brain to drop into trance. And then really what I would do is we pre-program in the brain.
All right, man, walk me through this because we want to give these people some tangible. So I'm walking to the gym or I'm walking into my office and I want to be able to write out, I'm writing a book. I'm writing 2 books.
Right.
I need to get in the state every day. I don't want to, and I'm going to take the weekends off because I know that I need to spend some time with my kids. But during the week, I need to be an animal, man. I need to be ruthless.
With writing?
With productivity in every state. So any state that I go into, I need to be able to find this. Okay. Can you walk me through a tangible process?
Sure. So the first thing what everyone wants to do is just to take a space to themselves for a couple of minutes. That's the first thing,
So
right?
no kids like
No
pulling on your
kids.
shirt.
Yeah, no kids climbing on your head
exactly.
and throwing stuff at
That's
you.
me meditating in the morning. Daddy!
right. So that's why you do it in your car.
Yeah, that's why I'm really good at it.
Yeah, that's why you're.
Shut up, kids.
It's why he's levitating now. You haven't seen Ben right now. He's above the table. But so the first step is, what did we say? We've got to re-elicit or remember that feeling of focus, or that feeling of drive, or that feeling or that belief of intensity. When was in the past? Or what would it feel like now to feel like that? Then what we're doing is we start literally playing in our imagination. We could go deep into the imagination with actual systems and how the memories are put together. But if we just keep it simple, and I just want you to sit there and remember or feel what it feels like to be on point. Now,
So let me ask you this. Is it important then when I have that state, when I've created it once, to acknowledge how it feels? Because dude, for me, so you know, like everybody on social media is always like, man, I crushed my workout today. I worked really, really hard. I never perceived that. Like, I've never had a hard workout in my life. I'm like, it was okay. Like, I worked hard. I could have worked harder. You know, I always, like, and perception is everything, right? Like, you get all these guys going, I fucking crushed it today. I'm like, dude, what does that mean? Like, compared to what?
compared to who,
Right? Yeah. So, you know, that may be one of my problems, too, is my standard is always like, well, did I work hard? Yeah, man, I worked really hard. But could I have worked hard? Of course, I probably could have worked harder.
Right.
So is it important then when I reach what you would define as a peak state that I acknowledge it, maybe celebrate it, pay attention to how I feel so that I can remember it? Because I know for me, dude, I've done it so many times, I gloss over it, right? Like I'm like, all right, on to the next thing, got to go be a dad now, got to go be a business, you know, like. So is that a vital part of the process?
Well, absolutely, because otherwise what will happen is we get a dopamine addiction and we don't get a serotonin release. So what we have to build in is a reward mechanism. Otherwise what happens is we're just constantly driving forwards without any actually appreciation or acknowledgement of what you've just been through. So that's why we start switching states. But let's go back to that process, man.
Yep.
Because some people are like, well, Andy, I can't remember shit and I can't feel nothing.
Right.
All right, okay. So I get it.
And
so
yeah, that's reality,
the truth,
right? Yeah.
man. We're in a pump-up seminar.
Right.
This is called truth, right? So what we have to activate is something called mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons?
Mirror neurons.
Okay.
And they're the most incredible things that you can possibly imagine. And let me explain my definition behind them. So what mirror neurons got developed in the brain, it goes back to when we were in tribes before we have verbal communication.
Okay.
So what would happen is the unconscious mind would start to model the things that were around it.
Yeah.
So this is for hunting skills,
Sure.
or this is fire, whatever it is, right?
Does everyone have that skill like innately?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As in the mirror neuron?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of our brain. So another way to look at this for modern times, I don't know. Have you ever seen a show with Rob Dyrdek called Ridiculous? Right. There's loads of people falling over, smashing themselves up. Why does everyone like that program? Because they watch someone fall over and go, ooh,
I feel it. It's like they're there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a mirror neuron being activated.
That's probably why people also like watching emotional like workouts. When it's a really hard workout, they're like, oh, they get that neurological response.
Well, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
So what you can do to be on like in peak state, like to be that warriorpreneur, that warrior entrepreneur, is you can't feel it, can't remember it, all right? Switch something on, like you just said. Like you wanted to train, you're going to watch a comedy or a love thing. You're not going to be amped to train.
Sure.
You switched someone training on for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
What happens? You want to go and lift some weight.
Sure.
I do the same thing with productivity, with myself. Like some days you wake up, okay, I'm feeling good because I've switched that on, but I can't be bothered.
Right.
Right? All right?
Yeah.
I'll put like Tim Ferriss on.
Well, Grant Cardone for 5 minutes.
Right. And guess
Thanks,
what?
motherfucker.
right. And my brain I've got my pen. Within 5 minutes, I want to work. I'm in.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're eliciting or lighting up the mirror neuron to what we've just seen. So think about this in people's lives, man. When we talk about the network is your net worth,
Massive.
You're hanging around with Muppets and idiots.
That's the best word. That's the word of the day right there.
That's an English word, right?
No, I love it.
So we're hanging around with Muppets, and what that means is we're trying to be world class.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So the way I describe this is if you're hanging around with people who drink and you've never drank a day in your life, what you going to start doing?
Sure.
If you've never trained a day in your life, but you start hanging around with people who train, what's going to happen?
Dude, and I noticed that like everywhere I go, so I've got kind of these avatars. If I go to California, I'm one way. If I go to Canada, it's interesting. And I'm not conscious of it. Like if I go in training goals, even if I haven't worked out in 6 months, I'm going to crush it there, man.
You're picking the whole machine up, not just the weights.
Because that's what I was when I was there, right? It's so interesting, man. It's so interesting. That's why I think, creating my offices in my gym was probably a bad idea for my training, except for the fact that I never go on the gym floor unless I'm working out.
Training.
Yeah,
right,
so that's an interesting thing. So, we talk about creating that perfect state around sleep. Like, don't do anything except for sex and sleep in bed.
Right.
Don't watch TV, don't read, don't do any of that stuff. So it's almost like creating like rooms and avatars to like, this is, if I'm going into my office, I know everything in this office is about creating a peak state. That's interesting. I mean, so that's such an easy thing for people to do, man.
Well, it's so easy, man. For the simple, I've had clients in the past, and we'll talk about the external anchoring. This is and we'll talk about negative and positive anchoring. I've had clients in the past, and I didn't tell them to do this, man. But I explained about what was triggering them in the house, and they literally sold the house, sold everything in it, and started out new.
Dude, I've changed gyms for that reason, because like you got a negative association with the gym. You're like, I'm out, man. Like I can't. Why? If it was my job, like I'd rather drive an hour to know that I'm gonna have an awesome workout than go somewhere 5 minutes up the road and have a shitty workout. It's worth it to me.
It is.
If that's a big part of my life, right? Maybe if for someone who's a big part of life is making money, maybe you're paying to go to some other office because you really like the environment, like the people around you, like the energy. And if that's going to get 10x the ROI, doesn't that just make perfect sense?
Totally.
So that's an external anchor. And now I want to talk about mastering the internal anchor.
Yeah. Well, just one step on that external. When you're talking about your office, that's exactly right. So you should be sitting at your desk and you look up and you should be motivated because of the pictures on the wall, the posters, the music, the smells, the taste, everything,
Dude,
right?
My bookshelf is like here in front of me. So I'm like, I'm watching, reading, I'm looking at all the names in the books and I've got my autobiographies and stuff. I'm like, all right, go. Okay, if I want to become one of these guys, you're thinking about it.
Exactly. So that becomes then we surround ourselves with this positive anchoring. So everywhere you look starts triggering the correct version of you, the correct neural net.
Right.
Now understand we also have negative anchoring. How many times you pick the phone up so someone's name go, I'll call them back later, man.
Never, man. I don't do that shit.
But they could be offering you millions of dollars.
Yeah.
You don't know. But that's a negative association that makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So understand that's external. And we can change this, manipulate it.
Man, so just to throw another twist at that, I think that I try to manipulate that, right? So like I realize that I have the ability at all times to influence someone's energy. So if someone I know is a I'll use a PG term. Someone's a Cancer. Someone's a negative influence on everyone around them.
Gotcha.
Then I'm consciously going to go into that situation and try to make them have a better day, rather than letting them take me down, which everyone else does.
Of course.
I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be like, I'm going to fucking own you.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to make you better because I'm standing beside you. Not that I'm this amazing person, but I know that a positive energy and can influence someone to have a better day, even if they don't want to admit it. So many people are such negative human beings, they refuse to admit it in that moment. Right? I'm going to stand there over you with a big smile on my face until I make you uncomfortable. I might even give you a fucking hug, right? Like have an awesome day, right? And I think people should do more of that. Imagine the influence in the world if we could just be like, hey, man, you're having a shitty day, and I'm going to stand here and make you uncomfortable as fuck until you have a smile on your face. Right? Wouldn't that be perfect? Like, and I see people like that everywhere, and I'm like, man, I'm just gonna figure out a way to give you a good day.
Dude.
Like cracking a joke, being goofy, whatever happens to be. It's kind of like my new thing in life.
That's cool.
It's like, like, why not? Because if I can make their day better, maybe there's a butterfly effect where they're gonna go home and be nicer to their wife or their husband or whatever. Maybe it actually influences the world in a positive way.
I do believe that, man.
Yeah.
I do believe that those things, and that's because you're a nice guy, dude, right?
I pretend really well.
Yeah, you do well, mate. Right. But that's the truth, and it's like when I go back to Liverpool to visit like family and stuff. All my old school friends are doing still old school shit, right? And because of that, what happens is they get stuck doing the same thing again and again and again and again, and then they beat themselves up. They're around the same people, but they want something different. So like we were talking about before, what they do is an imagine a different life, but they don't ever go and get that life. Because what happens if they don't? What happens if it fails? What happens if it's hard? What happens if they don't get it, right?
Ego's crushed.
Ego's crushed. And then their dream's gone. And so then, if the dream's gone, the hope's gone, which means they're stuck in that shitty job.
Yeah.
And then it's just going to make them depressed. Rather than understanding that I ain't special. No one's special. We just put ourselves around the right
Create
things.
good habits. And,
Yeah.
So let's say, first things first, I mean, everyone needs to identify the goal. I think that may be the worst thing is, and I've gone through years like that too, where I didn't set very specific goals, and you get to the end of the year, you're like, shit, I didn't really get anything done this year. Like, I need to set bigger goals. So set really, really big goals that actually get you excited to get out of bed. That's huge, right?
Huge.
And if you're not motivated to do something, your goals aren't big enough. Make them like just crazy.
Right.
And then having day-to-day accountability. Do you have a process that you like? Obviously, anchoring, getting myself in peak state is very important.
Yes.
But getting out of peak state is very, very easy for people. Like, I get into peak state, shit, phone rings, wife yells at me, whatever it is, I'm out.
Sure.
Not that she ever does that.
Never.
But so giving yourself some, I mean, I have processes that I use every day to keep me accountable and keep me, kind of setting goals. Is there something that you have that you suggest people do on a day-to-day basis to keep them accountable to their long-term vision?
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I think it's like, it's setting up the day and ending the day.
Beautiful.
And it's also understanding that people get overwhelmed. And they get overwhelmed because they have too many things going on in their head. And it's not tangible and it's not in front of them. And they also, these big projects that people do, that's great, but guess what? That project isn't probably going to happen for 4 years.
Right.
So why are you trying to think about it now and stressing yourself out?
Sure.
Let's focus on the immediate. Let's focus on the next month. Let's focus on this week. Let's focus on this day. And so when we can do that, it's called chunking. So we're chunking it down into small, manageable, bite-sized pieces that we can handle. Then what you spoke about before was that reward mechanism, right? So we get to the end, if we're doing a 2-hour block, well, 9 hours, 10 hours with you, dude, but normal people. So 2 hours.
I was on a deadline, man. I was on a deadline.
You did it,
Get
dude.
shit done.
Yeah. So when we can understand that we can use a manageable bite-sized chunk like 2 hours, then what that does is we set the goal. What does that mean? We ask why. What do we want at the end of this? What do we want by the end of this 2-hour window? What do we want by the end of this? One of the default settings of the unconscious mind is it only wants to know outcomes. It doesn't give a shit how you get there. That's called life. So by doing these small blocks, what this does is it starts to build this reward mechanism. It starts to build this winning new pattern, okay? So if we can focus on the day, if we can set the day up the right way, we can end the day the right way, you're building this big loop. This is then something that you want to repeat because it feels good.
Do you recommend some type of external reward mechanism, or just big self high five or big self hug or something? Like, seriously, like when I get something done, man, like I said, I'm never the guy who's going to stop and celebrate. I'm always all right, what's next? Like, perception, right? Like, am I working hard? Never a day in my life. I've never worked a day in my life. My life is awesome. Am I getting shit done? Most of the time. Some days I have unproductive days, but because I choose to spend them with my family or what. But should people be looking at creating an external reward mechanism, or is it something that you recommend that maybe you have some system for? Like, how do I stop to actually acknowledge that victory, man,
Which is why we train ourselves in bite-sized pieces. Because what's happening is, if we can teach the brain to win in a small time frame, it doesn't matter what projects, then the brain knows how to win. So we're retraining it. So at the end of that, between project A and project B, there needs to be a 5-minute break, or a little break where we reset. Right. It's in those 5 minutes that we go and just reflect. And that reflection makes us peace, it gives us gratitude, it does all of that stuff. So that's great. To take it in a bigger aspect, you could do reward mechanisms for the month. So at the end of that month, guess what? That is a reward that you've worked your ass off for the month, and that could be a reward with the family. That could be a day away. That could be time for yourself. But when we can build this in, then what happens is the month doesn't just go blur, 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 blur. It's month to month to month.
Right.
We're actually segmenting it. So if we can segment it, then what that means is that we can I'm going to use a British word again, balls to the wall.
Yeah.
Right, Canadian.
Is that balls to the wall? Yeah, I'm all about that.
Balls to the wall for that month or for that week or for that day or for that task.
Right.
And then what that does, it just builds that pattern.
Right. So it's really funny that I've never listened to Andy Frecilleo before. Andy Fricileo's got a podcast, MF CEO. If anybody's never listened to it, check it out. And I actually listened to my first one this morning.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, it's funny that I had never listened to it before. But he's got and the reason I listened to him, I follow him on Instagram. I've never looked at any of his posts. But yesterday he posted something about some like journal book he's got. I forget what it's called. Daily Habit, something, I don't know what it's called.
5-minute journal?
Something like that. Anyways, so he referenced this podcast. He goes, if you don't know what this is, check this podcast to tell you all about it. So I'm like, okay, I'll go check out this podcast. So this morning on the way into work, in the morning and then on the way to work, I was listening to this podcast. And he's got this really good process and the reason I think this would be perfect for our listeners is basically what he does is he sets like the 5 tasks that you need to accomplish today. So if you're trying to create a habit around exercise, around nutrition, around getting work done, 5 really small, achievable tasks that you can get done today.
Nice.
Yeah, simple. And if you get it done, you cross it off. You get it done, you cross it off. You get it done, you cross it off. At the end of the day, you get them all done, you get a W. And I was like, so you win. So you win the day. And if you can win every day of the year or most of the days of the year, it's such an easy thing. So I use a tool called Kanban, which is a similar process. So you post all of your sticky notes basically like in this app. And here's all the things I need to get done. When it's in progress, you move to the in progress. And when it's done, you move to the done.
Gotcha.
So you get to watch all these things, and by the end of the week or by the end of the month, you get all these things in the complete project, and you're giving yourself an external reward mechanism.
Cool.
So I think that's cool. Similar to what Andy does, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's I'm honestly bought 3 of his notebooks, and I was like, I'm gonna try this. I think it's great. I'm gonna give it to some of my employees and stuff. And I was like, this is awesome. I think giving yourself that reward every day, and just the idea of constantly saying, I won the day, I won the day, I won the day.
Exactly.
He talks about it. He's like, man, you just term yourself a winner.
Yes.
And that is so important in life. Like even giving it to my kids. I'm like, hey man, what's 5 things you can do today? And then at the end of the day, you won the day. Imagine creating 4 and 5-year-old kids who think they're winners. I'm like, God, this is huge, right? Like so simple. And even if it's like, hey, I remember to pack my bag. I remember to brush my teeth and not pick my nose. Like, this is a really productive day, right? Whatever it is. So whatever it happens to be,
I love it.
like, hey, but I won today.
Yes.
If I'm trying to break a habit or if I'm trying to create a new habit,
Right.
really small things. So Andy said his habit was I'm going to do 30 minutes of cardio. I'm going to do a chest workout. I'm going to do 1 sales call that I didn't want to do to one person, like things like that.
Right,
like once you get like small things, man, get them done. I'm like, oh, dude, this is good. So
I love that.
I don't remember what the website is, but it'll definitely be on First Form's website. So, or you can
I
check
love
out the
that.
MF CEO podcast. And he's a bright guy. He's very very abrupt. He's very motivational. If you like that type of stuff, he's a solid guy.
He's the man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, man, I brought you in here under the pretense of you need to fix me because I'm fucked up. So, no, okay. I mean, even if it's an experiment, let's play with this. So,
Let's do it.
I live this life. I live a wonderful life. I'm a very blessed human being. I've got wonderful people around me. Am I where I want to be? Not even close. Right. Am I taking massive action every day to get me where I want to go? Not as much as I should be. Not as much as I could be. I get in the trap of working in my business instead of on my business. Mm-hmm. And like we talked about, I use softeners. I'm like, my life's pretty damn good. I don't have any pain. I don't have anything making me uncomfortable, which is why I was so appreciative of the Dickens method at Tony's thing, because like that took me to like the deepest depths of uncomfortable that I've ever been to. Like,
wow.
So for me it was, if I'm going to be transparent, I'm going to start crying here or something. I won't, I promise.
You can, mate. I'll give you a hug.
I don't know. So had no relationship with my dad growing up. Very, very small relationship with my dad growing up. And my mother had a terrible relationship with her father. So the only male models I had were people who were not great models for being a good dad.
Right.
So in the unconscious part of my brain, that's the only model I have. Mm-hmm. So my biggest fear, truthfully, is my kids saying the things about me that I may have said about my dad and my grandfather. Right. So that's where I went with that pain process. Like, hey, if you're not a good dad, if you're not giving for them, if you're not like loving them, taking care of them all the time, teaching them how to be great people, teaching them how to be respectful, teaching them what unconditional love is, I was like, imagine what that would look like when they're 15, when they're 25.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I went down that path, and I was like, all right, man. Like, so literally, I literally left early to drive home. Like, and I was like, I'm going to spend the rest of the day with my kids because, like,
cool.
any amount of time away from them sucks.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest inspiration is making sure that, you know, when they say, hey, who's your hero? It's me. Like, it's not Superman. It's not fucking Iron Man. Like,
Right.
You know, my dad is, you know, and that's it. And whether that means treating my wife with 100% respect and love and admiration, or treating my daughter or my son with 100% respect and admiration, that's what it is for me, man. And so I need to swallow my ego sometimes and be like, I don't need to win this. You can win this. I need to love you. I need to admire, like all that stuff, right? So feeling that pain, I know I will never mistreat my kids or my wife. I just won't. Like, it just can't happen anymore because I went there. Nothing changed in my life. Nothing fucking changed, except I had that realization of what it could look like
The aha moment.
if I went down that path.
Right.
And I will forever be changed.
That's awesome.
And I think I need more of that in other aspects of my life to realize, like, what could it look like if I screwed this up?
Right.
And I think our listeners need to know that stuff too. Is like, we all use softeners so that we don't have to face the pain now.
Right.
Pain now is small, it's insignificant, it's minor, but yet we still avoid the fear, we avoid the pain, because I don't want to do that now. Like, I don't want to pay my taxes, or I don't want to go talk to that person, or whatever it happens to be, right? So what are some methods, maybe other than the Dickens method, maybe that, to allow people to actually find the motivation to change without having to go through that massive pain that is perhaps inevitable to follow in years to come if they don't address those things.
You don't pay attention, you pay with pain.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
It's
so true.
everything.
Yep.
And that's the first thing.
Yep.
You have to pay attention. What people need to sit down is be honest with themselves.
Is that
first of
writing
all.
everything down, do you think?
That's definitely writing stuff down. It's taking time. What I call a genius state is taking time for yourself to just be. Presence.
So let's create a process. Is it once a week? Is it once a day? Is it once a month?
Presence starts, to me, every morning. We need to activate the correct nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. So we need to make it calm. Something that I spoke about with Ben Greenfield was this, actually. He was setting up his mornings very differently to what he used to do. He trains, he said, he's 7 o'clock at night, and he does a very light workout in the morning, because he says what's happened to him, if he actually goes too full out in the morning, he feels stressed, and then everything else is knock-on effect during the day.
I'm the same way. So I'm in the same strange boat, not to interrupt you, sorry, but
No.
my money time is in the morning between
Right.
4:30 a.m. and like noon. And if I train in that time, which is when I have my best workouts, the rest of the time is shot. Like, I can be productive, but it's not like laser focused.
It's not the same.
Yeah, whereas if I get up and I work till 12, I get tons done. And then my training goes to shit. So it's like I kind of alternate days.
Right.
I say it's like a workout's done.
Of course you do, man.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
But that's the first place to understand. So step one would be, let me explain my morning routine. That's probably
please.
a beautiful
I'd love
place.
to hear
I'll
it.
put the science behind it and everything. This is a beautiful little morning routine I developed for myself, and we can talk about some other routines. But what people need to understand, again, big thing these days is meditation, right? Everyone's meditating, which is awesome. But what's the intent behind meditation?
Beautiful, because that's what I say. Most people don't know what the hell that means. Like, sit down and be uncomfortable, but with what objective?
Right. Well, did they just sit there and it's like to be peaceful, and then my mind's still chattering? Yeah, well, surprise, surprise. I've done it, meditated thousands and thousands of times, and my brain, I don't think, has ever stopped. Right. So you have to.
Got it.
You engage it, right? So the first thing you got to do, yes, we can do breath work. Yes, you do 20 big belly breaths. What's that going to do is slow, controlled, thinking about it, filling your stomach up with air when you breathe in, pushing your belly out, breathing out, pushing your stomach in, and holding the breath in each stage. What that does for you...
So I'm going to add to that. I do that too, but from a physique perspective. So doing the inhalation, pushing the belly out, pulling it all the way in, but I actually activate my pelvic floor when I do it at the extremes. So when it's fully all the way out, I hold, and when I exhale all the way when my belly's sucked in, I activate the pelvic floor, which has tremendous cross benefit into creating a stable pelvis for your training.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
That added to
Just add to that.
No, it's great. And so what we've done, once we've done that belly breath and we're in trance, meaning we're relaxed, we're calm, great. But then what? Right? Then what? That's where people stop. So the second stage to me is to start imagining, everything's about the imagination, right? Start imagining coming home at the end of the day and something amazing has happened. That's the key thing. So when we can activate our imagination, what happens is we're calm, we're in trance, we're in that place. Then we've got to start activating imagination and start pointing your brain somewhere, okay? So if we start imagining coming home at the end of the day and something, not specific, but something amazing has happened, what happens then is that your brain is directed, it has a specific focus. So what happens in your brain, you have a filter system. It works like Google. Whatever you type in Google comes up. It's the same with our brain. So if we start teaching it to search for something amazing to happen, the brain is going to search for that during the day. Now, what else does it do? Well, for a start, it changes our belief to what's possible that day. It changes our attitude to each task and each conversation that we're going to do. It changes how we speak to ourselves. It changes how we value ourselves. So what happens is, just by dropping ourselves into trance meditation and then actually directing those neural nets, what happens is we then start to form a new habit. Habits are formed in the unconscious mind, the software, right? So by doing it in the mornings in trance, then we actually form a new habit. We're switching on the correct parasympathetic nervous system so we are calm and entering the day. So what happens then, if we repeat that pattern every morning, what happens is it feels normal to be in that, rather than when we don't do it, it's going to feel strange.
Sure.
The opposite is probably for most people right now. They wake up, try to do that, feels weird, but then they carry on the day. Well, I want this to be so normal to people that they feel this way, because that's how you're just going to communicate with the world a different way.
Right, and everybody's going to ask how long it's going to take, and the answer is it's different for everybody, right?
It can take, like, literally, I could do those 20 breaths or to 10 breaths or whatever it is in like a minute. I can do this visualization process in 3 minutes. Done. Okay. Blasting an anchor. Probably need to put something out to show everyone what these things are, mate, and we can do that in the future. But when you're blasting an anchor or just creating that stimulus, it could be music, it could be a smell, could be you squeezing a stress ball, whatever, right? So that's the way we start to program our brain in the morning. Now, what happens is from there is we go about our day, but then what I find with entrepreneurs, they can't switch off, right? Yeah. So the brain's constantly going, which is great, but most people have a drive home from work. Most people, right? And so what we need to change then is, we need to understand that it doesn't matter what's happened in that day, that's a bubble of neural net that is playing. We can change that bubble of neural net. So what did I say before about changing states? The driver is the emotion, right? What did I say about mirror neurons? Right, activating that brain. So what I recommend people do on the way home to change state is they listen to something stupid, like fun. Like, you play a silly song, they play a podcast that they like, stand-up comedy, doesn't matter. The point is, the emotion will change, which does what? Well, it changes your belief and attitudes towards what you're about to do. Right. So suddenly, work switched off. I mean, there's all the things I can add to that, but work switched off, we go home, and then guess what? We're with our family in the correct emotion. So then, there's a third piece I teach. And I don't usually teach these on podcasts, mate. But the third piece is what I call reflection. And this is probably as much as the important in the morning and much as work to home, the nighttime reflection is so important. Because I don't know about you, man, but when I'm going through stress, my brain will not switch off at night. Right. It's just not happening. So what's happening is you're having these conversations that open loops. What happens at nighttime, I want stimulants off. I want computers off. I just want some chilled out music on, binaural beats in, whatever, right? And I want space. For 5 minutes for yourself, 10 minutes, whatever. Once you take a dog for a walk, right? Same thing. But the reflection means that I want you to just sit with the noise. The chatter is going to come. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't go into the pattern, like I'll start thinking about John who did this to me, right? That memories come up, but we don't have to go down it. We can just sit back, whoa, catch it, okay, just let it go. Yeah.
Do you have a method to let it go, like a visualization process, or do you just kind of how do you not go down that path?
Internal conversation.
Yeah.
That's the fastest way. There's other
I
ways.
find like if I start going, okay, I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not going to go down that path.
What you're saying to yourself,
all of a sudden
right?
you're down that path. So for me, it's just literally, I'll like almost like a meditative process. I'll envision breathing in and then breathing it out.
Beautiful.
And I'm actually pretty good at making it go away now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
So I mean,
awesome.
that's how you accelerate that meditative process. I see a thought, I feel a thought,
Beautiful.
and then I breathe it out. It goes away.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So
And that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to do it. But understand what you just said about your self-talk then. You were taking yourself down a path because you were telling yourself, don't go down that path, don't go down that path.
I'm saying hypothetically, right? That's what I would
Right,
picture happening.
but that's what most people do because that's their self-talk.
Right.
Is don't go down that path. I don't want to be stressed. I don't want to be overwhelmed. I don't want to be in debt. The filter system in your brain distorts and deletes the first bit of that sentence. So all it hears is the dominant thought. Don't stress. Don't go down the path. That's all it hears, man. So your focus starts to go down that path.
Yeah.
So the questions I want you to ask at the end, once that noise stops, and it will, I promise you, just let it stop. There'll be a peace. Then we ask ourselves 2 questions. Have I done my best today? Have I been kind on myself today? Or nice to myself? Might sound the cheesiest question ever, man.
No.
But it's important because the question we ask to those is, well, no, I haven't done my best today. All right. What can I do tomorrow to make sure that I do? Mm-hmm. Same with have I been nice to myself? No. Okay. What can I do tomorrow to make sure I do? What this does then is
Are you journaling that, or are you just thinking about it?
different ways. People like journaling. Some people don't like journaling. If it's journaling for you, then the 5 minute journal is brilliant. Yeah. Or just a piece of paper. But when we ask those questions, what it does is it closes the loops for the day in our brain, which means what? We can go into sleep at peace, calmness. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is if we don't do this end, the loops are still open. They're playing all through the night. So you wake up in the morning and people wonder why they're going straight into anxiety. Well, it's not because of the morning. Now we can sort that out and change it, but it's because of the night. So if we change the neural nets, the chemistry changes, the focus changes, so we go into sleep a completely different version of us. And if we do those 3 specific routines, what this is going to do is maintain our day's performance. Because it doesn't matter what you're doing, if you could put it on your Google Calendar so it pops up, you can put it in an alarm those 3 times of the day, whatever. But what you're doing is that will become a habit very quickly. It will feel normal. And when you don't do it, it won't feel right. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So most people are waking up and almost in a panic mode to get out of the house, get to work, get their kids to school. What's the solution, man? I know that this isn't really your area of expertise. Is it just like getting up earlier, or do you recommend like you just got to carve out time at any point in the day, or does it always have to be in the morning?
No, it doesn't have to be in the morning. The reason why we use the morning is because some people are chaos in the morning and they don't get any time till they get out the house. Right. So guess what you do? You use the car.
Yeah, sit in the car.
Yeah, you use the car and you drive. If you're driving somewhere, then you can have the choice of what you're listening to. So let's activate some mirror neurons.
You should probably be listening to Andy Murphy's podcast.
That
or
works
mine.
too.
Or
yours, mate. Yours, mate.
I'm okay.
But when we start to do that, what happens is really what we're trying to do is make sure that we are staying in the neural nets that are feeling good, making us the best version of us, and so we can move forwards doing that, rather than lighting up the old version of us with the old neural nets, feeling shitty, feeling anxious, and then trying to go out the day. Mm-hmm. That's all we're doing is we're just swapping neural nets. The challenge is most people don't have this new version of them, right? That's not built. Yeah. So they don't have that contrast. They don't have that contrast frame. So this is where it always starts. So when we start building states and peak states, or even start imagining how your life could be, what it does is it lights up or starts to build a different circuit, a different neural net, a different neighborhood, if you want to go to that thing.
Do you have a process that you go through to help people set those goals or to identify those avatars that they're trying to create? Because I know it's not an easy thing for most people to envision something you're not. So like something, vision boards and, just writing down goals, anything, because you've got a online program, online member sites. Is that something you focus on the site?
It's in there for sure. And the eight-figure think is the most comprehensive mindset system that exists. It's insane. I use it myself. I was using it this morning because I keep going around looking at everyone else's. I use my own stuff, which is cool.
That should be, right?
As it should
be like me using someone else's workout program. Like, I don't believe in myself.
Right. So what was the question? What was the question
goal
again?
setting. So do you have a process for envisioning what the end result looks like? So, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Right. How do I really get clarity on that, man? Because clarity is very important. Ambiguity is going to be a big problem, right? Absolutely. If you're not very clear. So when I was a bodybuilder, it was clarity of purpose, man. What's my end result? What's my reason? And those are so important. Yes. And when that went away, once I had children, I literally couldn't be the same human being anymore. I just couldn't have the same motivation. I couldn't get the same workouts done. I couldn't get even in the same shape. It just wasn't this. I just didn't have the same inner drive to just anything in my way. I'm going to crush it. Yeah. So that's important, man. Clarity of vision, clarity of purpose. Do you have a process?
Yeah. Well, let's ask. I'll give some people nice and simple process. They can ask 4 questions.
Great.
Nice and simple. First one is you've already addressed it. What?
What
exactly do I want? What is the outcome? Yeah. Because expansion always happens. We either resist it or we allow it.
Right.
So we might as well allow it and create possibilities. Mm-hmm. What is the exact outcome? The second thing is we have to engage the kinesthetic. We have to engage the emotion. So that's like what you were talking about with your kids. That's the why. So what do we want? What's the exact moment in time that I know I've achieved this? Meaning, if I was going to the beach, how would I know I'm at the beach? I'd smell the ocean air. I'd feel the sand beneath my toes. I'd see the sun. That's how I know exactly the moment in time.
Man, I think that's you know what? I don't want to just pass over that because that's fucking awesome. I never even thought about that myself. It's I set these goals. When do I know I've achieved it? And give myself an opportunity to actually celebrate this. Because maybe that's why I'm not celebrating things. Because I just kind of set one goal and move on to the next one, right? What does it feel like? What does it look like to actually have achieved this? Is it a certain number in my bank account? Is it a certain car in my driveway? Is it a certain amount of love with my kids and my wife? Whatever, right?
Exactly that moment. And that is where I build that into people's brains. Right. So that becomes so dominant in their head that then it engages the next question, which is why? Why are you doing this? Why is this important? Why do you want to give it everything you've got to get what you want?
Yeah.
What's that why, man? Because it's so different for everybody. And I've had clients in the past who are the top internet marketers in the world in doing massive, amazing things. But guess what? They're traveling all the time. They're not seeing the family, but the why was the family. So I was like, dude, you don't see your family. And then the kid gets sick.
Sure. And then, dude, so I went through it last year, man. I literally canceled hundreds of days on the road because it was just is it worth the money or do I want to be home with my kids? I'm no amount of money. I'd rather stay home and cut it a little bit. But it is what it is, man. I mean, that's my, I set down my core values and here's my core values. And if it doesn't match that, that's my guiding light, man. Set out your core values and say, what are the most important things in your life? And that determines your decisions. If money's number 2 or number 3, right? Well, that's number 2 or number 3. So anything that's below that is, then you work on money first. But if family is number 1, which it is for me, dude, that's it.
That's it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'd rather live in a cardboard box with my kids with a big smile on their face. And that's the thing is as parents, we attach to, what we want. And we want our kids to have a nice house and go to the best schools. And they don't know. How many people do you know that grew up in a 1-bedroom house with 5 brothers and sisters and have fucking awesome lives and awesome relationships and happy people? Lots.
So
how many do you know that grew up in mansions with all the shit they wanted who are assholes? Lots of them. Because the kid doesn't know. They don't care. They'll make the most of what they've got. It's the parents, right?
It's the parents.
Yeah. So, man, I'm just attaching myself to not even material things, but just giving my kids a great experience in life, giving them great attitudes. It's harder than you think, man, because so many people are influences, right? And so rather than just you being a positive influence, you're spending a lot of your time unwinding the other bullshit influences and then trying to be a positive influence. Totally. And I realized that. I'm oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize I'd have to deal with that. Where did that come from? I didn't put that in there. Things like that. And you're especially with school and
social media is a nightmare for kids.
Yeah, my kids aren't anywhere near TV or social media, but
that's good.
Yeah, no.
That's good.
Yeah, but even like grandparents and neighbors and friends and older friends.
Right. Right.
Where's my 5-year-old playing with 12-year-old boys and talking about those things? I'm like, I
Oh,
don't know
it
if I
goes
like
in
that.
there, right?
Yeah,
It
you're
does
like,
go
oh,
in there.
Yeah. So interesting, man. Learning to unwind the shit.
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, even other adults, like, well, this adult said this, and I'm like, oh, how do I unwind that? Like, because adults know everything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Unwinding's a good word.
Yeah.
I like that.
It is. Well, that's
I like that, man. Unwinding it. So
Yeah,
the
yep.
third one for you, dude.
Yep.
Might as well keep going.
Yeah.
So why? So we're engaged in the kinesthetic on the why. The third one is how. How am I going to accomplish this? How am I going to keep this client engaged? How am I going to make sure that this client understands that this is the right fit for them? How am I going to connect with this person so deeply? How am I going to achieve this goal? How? What it does is open up behavioral flexibility. And that's so important because nothing's fixed. And this is what people get. They get so obsessed with a specific image in their head and it doesn't happen that way. And then they get, wow, it didn't happen. You just imagined it.
Right.
It's not real yet. But people get so pissed that the thing that they created in their head isn't happening in their life. Well, have you done any work? It's just you're fantasizing about something, right? So the fourth one is, to me, is the most important.
Really?
Yeah. The fourth one's by far the most important. Who?
Okay.
Who have I got to be right now to make this happen?
I love that one.
So when you go back to your kids and you're changing state from work to home, guess what? What do I want from tonight? I want to hang out with my kids and have fun. Why? Because this is the most important thing possible for me. So how are you going to do that? Well, you know what? TV's off. We're going to play games. We're going to hang out. We're going to have fun. Right. So who have I got to be? I got to be dad.
Yeah. One of my greatest influencers is Jim Rohn, who unfortunately passed away recently. And man, something he said to me was one of the first things I learned when I was kind of on this journey, of self-mastery and becoming my greatest self.
Right.
And he said, man, don't set the goal to be a millionaire for the money. Don't set the goal to have an amazing house for the house, or to have a Lamborghini for the Lamborghini, or even to be a top bodybuilder for the muscle. Like, set the goal for the person that will make of you to achieve it. And that is so amazingly powerful, because you get the house and you've been there for 2 weeks and then you're like,
it's just the house.
It's just fucking okay. You get the Lamborghini and you're like, hey man, I get to drive fast and measure my penis against other men. But ultimately, it doesn't fucking matter either. Like, it's just like having the beautiful wife. Few months later, like, she's just another, beautiful. Like,
especially when you're arguing.
The idea is you have to love who she is, right? It's not about the external beauty. I want to love who that person is, and just like I want to love who I am, the person I've become, right? So people are so attached to the vanity of life.
Totally.
It doesn't fucking matter.
Ego. It's
it doesn't matter.
It's ego.
So, and this is one of the battles that I'm fighting with myself right now. Is like, when you lose attachment to these external things.
Yes.
How are you motivated to make hundreds of millions of dollars,
well,
right?
That's even easier to me.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah, that's even easier, because to me, this is about your own internal growth.
Yeah.
And your business will match where you are. Completely. If your business is a mess, your mind's a mess. If your mind's on point, probably your business is going to be on point or getting to be there close.
Yeah.
So to me, that's everything. So
true, man.
This is our internal growth. Yeah. So every day, this doesn't stop. Yep. It never stops until, and I'm sure when you pass over, right, you're still going to carry on doing this shit a different way.
Yep.
But it's constant growth. So when we're in the external and we're constantly searching for contribution to help people, when we're constantly wanting to strive for growth inside ourselves, when we have that image of who we are in our full potential, then it doesn't matter if there's highs, there's lows, you lose all your money, you get it back. It's irrelevant, because you're matching where you are. Did that person annoy you, or did you just look at them a different way? That's growth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so true, man. And dude, I say that all the time, is like, everywhere you go, there you are. That kind of thought process is like, the way you do something is the way you do everything. And that's just the truth, man. And you're so right with that. And that may be the best answer that I've ever got for like, how do you get motivated? Like, I don't give a shit if I have a Lamborghini. Do I want a Lamborghini? Yes. But do I need it? Nah. Like, if I drive it, I'd rather give it away to someone who wants it way more than me than keep it myself. Truthfully, but when you put it like that, you're like, man, you're surroundings will be a reflection of your internal state. And that's just so the truth, man. So the truth.
And then we talk about ego, man. And ego, it's a human thing. And people talk about killing the ego, don't even understand what ego is, all the rest of it, right? That's the thing, right? Well, we look at ego as like that default mechanism in our brain that always wants to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And when we start looking at that's really what it is. So it needs feeding.
Yep.
So how does the ego get fed? Well, the classic thing is getting external validation. Right? These are the bling-blingers of the world that go around telling everyone how awesome they are, what the things they're going to do, and driving the Lamborghinis with the gold chains. Doesn't mean you can't drive a Lamborghini, but what's the intent to why you're driving, right? So when we understand that the ego is constantly needing to get fed and it's going to get from external validation, then it means you can talk about how awesome you are or you can beat yourself up. But either way, that's drawing attention to it. That's getting fed. That's like I learned this. Let me explain a bit more. I learned this in Australia, when I first went over there to do NLP and sales and stuff. And I remember my mentor saying they used to call it puking. This is Aussies. They're pretty raw. So they gives it, what happens when someone's being sick next to you, Andy? And I give it, I don't know, I feel sick. I want to throw up. He gives it, right. That's exactly the same with people moaning and complaining and other people attached to that. I know what you mean, mate. I know what you mean, mate. I know what you mean, mate. Yeah. And so understand.
Commiserating.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same with the bling bling or the self-pity. It's just external validation, which fills us up of our lack of self-worth for a while. That goes down. What happens? Oh, I'm going to go and tell someone else how awesome I am.
Right. Or I'm going to buy a new car.
I'm going to go buy a new car or a house or whatever crap it is. Or I'm going to show people my collection or the bank account in my the money I've got in my bank account. Or the people I've met who are the most successful, no one really knows they're successful.
Nobody talks about it. Yeah,
you're
absolutely right.
And the humble, the connected, and whether you talk about spirituality or whatever that means to you, it just means being self-aware.
Yeah, I think so many people are attached to looking up to the people who are the bling bling. So I see why, from a business perspective, you want to do it. Like, would my business be more successful if I showed off that a Lamborghini in a big house? Yes, absolutely. I'd have more low-level following. But do I want those people following me, right? Like, is that a good energy or a bad energy I'm bringing along for the ride, you know? So
from desperation. That's
and you know what, man? Like when I started in the online business of education, I had a lot of people who followed me and were very negative toward me. We're very very quick to bash anything I put out and like, oh, you're just trying to make money. You're full of BS. And then now that doesn't happen as much.
Of course, you proved it.
Well, no, not only that, but I think the people that are now following me are a higher level type of person. Right?
More educated.
Am I going to go out and tell somebody online that, man, you're a charlatan, you're full of shit? Like, am I going to take the time to write on somebody's Instagram or the YouTube? No. The good people in the world aren't going to do that.
They don't, right?
No, like, I don't have time to do that, man. Like, if it's just a reflection of myself. So I think, because when I started, the people that were following me were fans of bodybuilding.
Yes.
Right? Now the people that are following me are just people who are good people, successful people who realize there's an intelligent way to build muscle. There's an intelligent way to approach life.
Right.
So it's just a better group of people. Yeah, it's a better demographic.
The people you hang out with, right? Probably.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So it's an interesting perception, man. Like I used to get a lot of haters when I spent for the first couple of years, and I literally think they just went away.
Because there's someone else. Because you went biting.
Yeah. Well, I went out and everyone just, because I was a bodybuilder, it was this external thing, right? Everyone looked at me like, oh, he's this huge guy. And now I'm not a bodybuilder anymore. I'm just some dude. So, so
it's true though,
different people are going to follow you.
Yeah, I love that. Intelligent people, more sophisticated in their thinking. And also, it's interesting. I go on a lot of different podcasts. And like I went on the OPP podcast and I could communicate like this, right? I could talk fast. Ryan was asking loads of deep questions. Then you go on other people's and I start to talk and they're like, well, what do you mean? We got thoughts? What do you mean by that, Andy? It's like, all right, we've got to press pause there, rewind this to the beginning. Yes, you have a brain. Right. You're alive. Wow.
Sometimes we get to use it if you're really lucky.
Right.
Yeah, awesome, man. Dude, so I want to send everybody over to your stuff because you're awesome and you're teaching good stuff.
Thank you.
Where can they find you?
Google Mindset by Design or Andy Murphy NLP. Mindset by Design, I've got about 170 episodes on a podcast. You can email me directly.
What's the number one podcast everyone should go to and listen to right now?
Let's go back a few. The biggest one I've ever done, which has got the most downloads, which was interesting, was Conor McGregor.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that's that.
Yeah, I've done a couple on Conor. I've done when Ronda was famous. I've even broke down Elon Musk's book, all of this stuff. And Conor McGregor one, I literally took all the clips from YouTube of him speaking and then broke down, like the way I do, broke down each section of the whole thing and showcased why he's thinking and how he's thinking and all the rest of it. And that one, I'll put it into the show notes and give you the number. Perfect. But it's people seem to love it, man. Yeah.
Cool, man. That's really, really cool. And dude, I appreciate it. I appreciate you helping me, and I'm sure you're going to continue to help me.
I'd love to, buddy.
Yeah, man. If anybody wants to find Andy, you can definitely link him in the show notes at benpakulski.com/podcast. Have a great day. Hey, this podcast wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our awesome sponsors. So I'm going to take this minute to give a shout out to ATP Labs once again. You guys know that I've aligned with ATP Labs, and the reason I chose to align with ATP Labs is they're a company with integrity. And I know a lot of people use that word and they throw it around mindlessly, but the reality is ATP Labs cares about what goes into their products as much as I care about what goes into my body. And I don't want to be putting in junk. I want maximum performance. I want maximum output from my body. So it's important what goes in it. It's important that I don't put in lots of stuff, but what I put in gets used. So ATP Labs is all CGMP, third-party tested, so you know there's no contaminants. You know there's nothing in there. Like a lot of these other ingredients or other products are just focused on bottom line, being competitive with their pricing. And I understand it. I get it. You know, you're running a business, you got to make a profit. But for me, I'm all about what's going into the body to get the most out. So if you want to maximize your performance in the gym, I highly suggest you check out atplabs.com. And for being a listener of the Muscle Expert podcast, we're going to give you a discount. Use code BPAK, B-P-A-K. And if you want to check out the best BCAAs on the product, is the one I'm using right now, is a raspberry flavor. It tastes amazing. Actually even uses organic stevia, which, by the way, stevia can actually be a very highly sprayed with pesticides ingredient that we don't think about. So it's these organic stevia, all fermented aminos, and it's a really, really high quality product. Check it out. Use code BPAK and let me know what you think. Have a great day, guys. Enjoy this podcast.
Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.